Hi, I will be analyzing my poster which I created for my assignment. The title of the poster is Impact of Covid-19 on Retail Market Sector. I will start with the introduction. In this poster, I will be analyzing the impact Covid-19 had on retail market sector. The Covid-19 struck around the world in March 2020, and it had a massive impact on the world's economy. There are different sectors in the market which dealt differently with Covid-19, which I will be explaining in the poster, and they had different effects of Covid-19, as the hospitality sector had significantly declined due to government restrictions and public having to stay indoors, so there were less people going out, whereas in comparison the health sector had sudden increase in demand due to increase in hygiene products and medicines. This poster will also have literature review which will show previous research conducted on this topic and what their conclusions were, and it will also show the research methodology which will explain the methods used while I carried out my research. The data then which I will collect using my research will be analyzed, showing the impact on the retail industry, and the poster will end with the conclusion and summarizing the outcomes and recommending how businesses can approach this situation and minimize their effect. The literature review. According to Wilcox 2020, in response to pandemic, it will be key for the market leaders in retail industry, which will decide the companies can use virus either to their advantage or disadvantage. This study concluded that companies which were versatile and which were able to adapt to the changing scenarios were the companies that would have advantage, as they would have to make rapid changes in order to meet the customers' demand. These changes relate to supply chain changes. They had to find alternative ways to get supplies in, and so they can meet the required demand. And their distribution channels had also have to be make changes. This was due to less customers visiting the actual retail stores due to the virus and government restrictions, as there were limited amount of people that could enter the shops at a time to do shopping. So what market leaders such as Sainsbury's and Tesco's decided to do was they saw increased demand in the online orders, so they had to invest more time in order to meet that demand online. Bartik's survey, which was based on nearly 6,000 businesses, concluded that 29% of the businesses had to shut down during the first month of the crisis. This was when the crisis was at peak, and he also concluded that 14% of these businesses may never open again due to the problems they faced. Therefore, in order to respond, the government had to take actions and allow businesses grants and reliefs in order for them to carry on operating, which would be very beneficial for government in long term, as the more businesses close, the more it will decrease the GDP of the country. Research methodology. In order to keep my research reliable and valid for conclusions, I use quantitative data, which is based on facts and statistics. This data can be relied on and is less altered in comparison to qualitative data, which is mainly based on opinions and interviews or focus groups. Qualitative data is more of an open-ended question which can lead to people's opinions and emotions. The quantitative data which I used were the company's financial statements. These were accessed from the company's official websites, so they were not altered. I use these statements to check the facts and the figures, how companies' profits or other parts of the balance sheets and profit and loss statements, how they changed during the month of March and April when the virus was at peak in comparison to earlier that year. I also used other sources of data such as primary and secondary sources of data. Primary research is something which I did, and this was based on the first-hand research, whereas secondary data I collected was online articles and other studies which were done previously, so I could see their outcomes and compare those outcomes in comparison to my research outcome to see if there were any similarities or differences. We move on to data analysis. Data analysis, the different retail sectors had different impact from COVID-19. In March 2020, the sales in the food retail sector boomed as there was increase of sales by 13.9%. This was due to people preparing and shopping in case there was a long-term lockdown, and therefore this led to very high demand in March and April for specific food retailers, as they did not expect such demand, and the supply was shortage due to there was less importing going on, as some businesses were closed or they were restricted due to government guidelines. This led to excess demand, and customers wanted to get the products before they actually run out in order to prepare for a long-term lockdown. Eventually businesses did end up catching up with the demand as the supply channels they opened, and customers' demand slowly decreased as well. There was also major demand in health sector as well, such as pharmacies. This was mainly due to hygienic products and medicines, as customers were increasingly using those in order to keep the minimal level of the virus. There were few sectors which had negative impact of COVID-19 as the demand increased. For example, the hospitality sector, as people prefer to stay indoors and delayed their holidays until it was safe for them to go out to a different country or go on holidays. So that decreased the demands of bookings in hotels, as people prefer to stay at home due to safety reasons. Within the food industry, the smaller businesses did not see as much increase in sales as the market leaders such as Tesco's and Sainsbury's. According to a Pentano study, this was due to bigger retailers being able to adapt more quickly and operating online, as the demand increased rapidly online, and small businesses do not operate online as much as the bigger businesses do. So they did not see as much change as the bigger businesses did. Hughes 2020 study also concluded, due to small businesses suffering from pandemic, 2,623 retail stores are expected to be permanently closed. Our 23,570 jobs could be lost as a result of the closing stores. Although these jobs would be lost, there would be some increase in certain sectors due to increase in demand. So the jobs in some sectors where the demand was high may increase, whereas the sectors which are not as busy their jobs in that sector may be lost. We now move on to the results. The pandemic resulted into impacting the market leaders in food industry having to make rapid changes, as LA in 2020 found that Tesco's operating costs increased by 200 million in the second quarter of 2020, as well as Sainsbury's operating costs increasing to nearly 190 million due to restructuring the business and investing more into online deliveries where the demand was high. Other challenges industries had to face were safety challenges for the employees as well as customers, and they had to follow strict government guidelines. The examples of a safety challenge due to COVID-19 are customers and employees requiring face masks while they were working, and maintaining social distancing and keeping the contact to minimum level in order to decrease the virus or not to spread it further. Conclusion and recommendations. To conclude, the retail industry was majorly influenced from COVID-19. Certain sectors in the market saw a rapid increase in demand and decrease in supply due to supply chain problems, whereas some sectors such as hospitality faced the opposite, as there was excess supply due to decrease in demand. This led to major retailers such as Sainsbury's had to improvise and focus more on demand, which increased for online orders in order to meet the customers' requirements and stay in the competitive market. So there was increase in online orders. This was due to customers preferring to stay at home and for the safety of for safety of themselves and their family. So they started ordering more online so they could get food delivered at home rather than them having to go out. In terms of recommendations, due to rapid changes of the business must adapt with the changes. The businesses have to be versatile. They have to be able to change with the environment. As we saw in our study, the businesses such as Tesco's and Sainsbury's, who were able to adapt in time by going online, where the demand was a lot higher, they were able to increase their sales by almost 14% in the month of April. They can also consider restructuring in order to meet the customers' demand and follow government guidelines in order